We're here to talk about the top 5 prospects in the 2026 NFL draft class, and the number one guy on the list might shock you. He plays a position that we never see at the top of the board. What's up, everybody? I'm Luke Easterling. I'm the NFL draft analyst here at Athlon Sports, and I'm joined by Steven Lasson, our college football editor, the guru of all things college football, and we're going to break down the top 5 prospects in the 2026 NFL draft class. We're going to start at the bottom. I know you guys want to get to the top to see who that surprising player is, but we're going to start at the bottom with a guy that definitely is well known by anybody who paid close attention to the college football landscape this season. We talk all the time, every year when we head into the draft, what positions are the premium positions? You either are a quarterback, you can protect the quarterback, or you can get after the quarterback. That's where it starts. That's where the value is. And the number 5 guy on our list, man, Steven, I don't know if anybody got after the quarterback in college football with the violence, the consistency, the variation with the ways he can get after the quarterback. It's Miami's Rueben Bain Jr. And I think from the moment this season started, from the first Miami game, nationally televised, this guy was everywhere. He was dominant. Before we get to how he translates to the NFL, which was really the main focus of this conversation, I want to look back. You pay so much attention, so much close attention to the college football game. When you watched Miami this year all the way to the national championship game, it felt like there were multiple impact players on that defense, but it was really Rueben Bain that stirred the drink for the Hurricanes on that side of the ball. What did you see from him this year?
Luke, I think you absolutely nailed it, because the playoff run was kind of a culmination of his career. You know, he's from Miami. He goes to Miami, stars there as a true freshman from day one, was dominating as a true freshman in the line of scrimmage. And then that second season, he got injured, but he comes back this year better than ever. And the playoff run, you know, we started with 4 tackles for a loss against Texas A&M. The playoff run, every game, he was making a big time impact in the trenches. So I kind of felt like the playoff run was kind of him almost realizing that potential. We saw this as a true freshman, but he had that injury in 2024. And then this season really started to realize that, with culminating in just a dominant playoff. And I think if you wanted to make the case that, hey, why did Miami make the national championship game? It was because of guys like Rueben Bain dominating the line of scrimmage in wins over Texas A&M, Ohio State, and Ole Miss. So I think you said it there. You saw a lot of playmaking at the line of scrimmage, the ability to dominate and take over the games. And that's one of the reasons why Rueben Bain was one of the best defenders in college football this year.
You know, each one of these guys that we're going to talk about, they're not perfect. There's never a perfect prospect, and there's always something that you can point to. We're already seeing it with Rueben Bain Jr., where the doubters are coming out and they're like, oh, his arms are too short. Like, that's his thing now. Like, that's the trait that everybody's like, oh, going into the season and even through the season, he was a top 5 guy. But now that we think his arms are like 33 inches instead of 34, he should be not a top 5 pick. And it's wild to me. We're going to get to the combine here in a couple of weeks. And if he comes in with shorter arms, like the idea that we're going to throw away all of that tape that we just saw from a guy who took his team all the way to the national championship game and led that defense because of an inch and a half or so of arm length is just wild to me. And listen, I'm not gonna discount the idea that there are technical advantages to having longer arms. If you have that wingspan, you can keep guys away from your chest. You're more effective with certain moves that you can do because you can keep the defense, you know, the blocker away from your body. But man, when you watch this guy play football, he's just the most dominant player on the field every single snap, it feels like. So, again, it's not that he's not without a technical weakness there, but when you watch the tape, he can get after you with speed. He can get after you with power. He can get after you with technique and the way he bends the edge, the way he wins with his hands. He can set you up outside. He can come back inside. And he just finishes. You want to talk about a guy with effort? The interception he had on the tipped ball earlier in the season, where he's a defensive end and he's making those plays all the way over to the sideline. Those plays don't happen if you're not hustling, you're not giving 100% effort. Those are the things that I think jump out on tape with coaches, especially, that are going to really get them fired up in the draft room about this guy. If you look back at the tape, number 5 might feel low to have Rueben Bain on this list. And when it comes to the impact he has on the field, when it's 3rd and 8, when you got to have it, you got to get your defense off the field in clutch situations, this feels like the guy that you want to have on the field. We're going to move to number 4. We're going to go to the other side of the ball. And again, I know we're going to talk about this with our number 1 guy, but it's rare to have a guy from this position group in the top 5. And I know we just saw a running back go in the top 10 last year with Ashton Genty coming out of Boise State. He goes to the Raiders. Even at number 6 overall last year, that was lower than I had him on my board. Ashton Genty was number 3 overall on my board last year. So if we're talking just about the talent that they bring to the table, I've got another running back in the top 5 this year, and there's honestly a massive gap between him and the rest of the running back class. But it's because of the ability to make plays as a receiver, as a runner. He can pass block. He can just do everything at a high level, and every time he touches the ball, this guy can hit a home run. It's Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame. Again, a guy that, wire to wire was just a dynamic playmaker for his team throughout the entire season. When you watch Notre Dame this year, I know Jadarian Price in the backup role, he had his own big plays throughout the year, but Jeremiyah Love for me is in a class of his own. How do you feel about him?
Luke, I think you're 100% right there too, because if you look at Jeremiyah Love's career at Notre Dame, he was, reserve back in 2023. He kind of comes onto the scene in 2024, and then in 2025 finishes as a Heisman finalist. We can go back to that 2024 season. He was banged up down the stretch when Notre Dame was making its playoff run and played Ohio State in the national championship. But he still had that awesome touchdown run against Penn State. You think about the big, long touchdown run against Indiana. And it is those big plays. I mean, averaging over 6 yards per carry in back-to-back seasons, 9 runs of 50-plus yards in back-to-back seasons, the ability to catch the ball, and also not a lot of tread on the tires. I mean, under 200 carries in back-to-back season. So he brings that big playability, but also that versatility to catch the ball out of the backfield. Like you said, the pass blocking too. So I think when you're talking about like day one guys who could come in and make an impact right away, to me, Jeremiyah Love is easy plug and play and can produce those big time plays for any offense.
And again, we talk about everybody's got a weakness, and I think you touched on it with the fact that when he was banged up, when that knee was really bothering him, he is a player who plays with reckless abandon for his body. I mean, this is a guy that even while he was dealing with that, he's hurdling guys. He's, that touchdown run that we saw where he's breaking tackles and he's giving that extra effort. You love to see that. I think durability might be the only thing that worries me about him if he wants to keep playing at that physical style of play, and the injuries do start to nag him a little bit, and he's got one of those, if a knee flares up again, I think that's really the only thing that concerns me at the next level. But man, I mean, this is a guy that, again, even just as a receiving weapon out of the backfield, you just never have to take him off the field. And when you don't have to take your running back off the field, it allows you so much freedom with the plays you can call and the situations you can't, because you're not advertising anything to the defense when you take him off the field and you put somebody else and you're like, oh, they've got their passing back in, they're going to throw the ball. You can line him up everywhere. You can do whatever you want, and you're never telling the defense really what's coming. And with a guy as talented as he is with the ball in his hands, it might not even matter if they know what's coming, because Jeremiyah Love can make the big plays no matter what. So again, another year with a top 5 running back doesn't mean he's going to go in the top 5, but it does mean that whoever gets him outside of that range is obviously getting a great value and a guy that's instantly going to balance your offense, both as a runner and a receiver. Number 3 guy on our list, and we've seen this type of defender multiple times in the last few years come out of the draft. We saw it with Micah Parsons coming out of Penn State, where you've got a guy who's an off-ball linebacker. He's lining up at that inside linebacker spot, running all over the field, making plays in the backfield, making plays sideline to sideline. Then at the next level, he moves out to the edge and he becomes kind of a defensive end pass rusher, and he does those things. He can be versatile. Then another Penn State guy came along last year. We saw Abdul Carter do the exact same thing, but it was an earlier transition. I feel like Penn State looked at what the Cowboys did with Micah Parsons before they traded him and said, hey, why don't we do that with Abdul Carter right now and move him from that linebacker spot to the edge? It was obviously a huge win for them. Even with one arm, he was dominating people in the college football playoff. We saw it last year. He's a finalist for Defensive Rookie of the Year after his first year with the Giants. This year, we've got another one, Steven. We've got Arvell Reese from Ohio State, who, again, off-ball linebacker guy a couple years ago. Last year, they move him out on the edge kind of more full-time. They still lined him up all over the place, but, man, 6'4", 240+, 20 years old, Steven. A young prospect coming into this draft. This guy, I mean, you can make a case that he's the best player in this draft in terms of just pure potential and upside, what he can bring as just a defensive weapon. But tell me, you watch that Ohio State defense, which, by the way, is loaded with prospects in this draft. You'll find them all over the place. Sonny Styles. You got Caden McDonald. There's so many guys from that defense that we're going to see drafted high this year. But Arvell Reese is the guy in the front seven, who I felt like was such a versatile weapon. What did you see from him when the Buckeyes were on defense this year?
Luke, I think the biggest kind of takeaway that you had from Arvell Reese this season is a guy who's probably just starting to scratch the surface of his potential. He came into Ohio State in 2023, didn't play a lot of snaps. 2024, saw more snaps on defense, and then you kind of started to see coming into the 2025 season that this guy has a chance to be a breakout player, and he delivered this season. Like you mentioned, that versatility. We saw the ability, the explosiveness to get after the quarterback. There was some skepticism about how Matt Patricia's hire would work out at Ohio State. Perhaps him coming in, being able to do some things defensively with his NFL background may have helped Arvell Reese. But man, every time that you watched him, it was just, he popped off the TV as being so explosive and so dynamic. And it just gets back to that idea that he's got all this potential, scratching the surface. You mentioned at the start of the video about getting after the quarterback, and a guy that's got that kind of potential and upside. It's very easy to see why he's going to be a high pick in the NFL draft, just because after this is his best season, all first team, all Big Ten. There's a lot of upside and a lot of game that he can still develop in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the issue, I think for teams with him is going to be, it's so much of a projection, right? Because like you said, he didn't really become a full-time starter until last season. And I think the interesting thing for me is people will say that the value is on the edge, right? You need the more premium position is that edge rusher who can get after the quarterback. And if he develops that skill set and becomes that and kind of maximizes his physical talents, I could see him being a dominant player at that spot. Right now, I think he's a way better linebacker. I think he's a better player as an off-ball linebacker. He brings you kind of a more immediate impact on an every down basis. And I think technically, in terms of technique, like he's more ready to make an impact at that position. But if you've got a top 5 pick, I mean, if you're at the Jets at number 2, are you taking a guy that you're going to put off the ball at that inside linebacker spot at number 2, or are you going to put that guy down on the edge and you're going to have him rush the passer more often than not? And that's I think the conversation that NFL teams are going to have is that, is he an edge guy primarily for us? Is he a linebacker? How do we value that? And if we do think he's an edge guy, do we think he's got that double-digit sack perennial, potential at that spot, even though it's way more projection than production with him at that spot? We've gotten 3 guys into this, Steven, and we haven't talked about a quarterback yet. We're finally going to talk about a quarterback now. And again, we kind of mentioned this with the running back class, where there's just one guy at the top, and then there's just this massive gap between him and the rest of the group. This quarterback class lost a lot of guys to going back to school, right? Dante Moore from Oregon, Lenore Sellers from South Carolina. Obviously, Arch Manning isn't coming out this year. We got so many guys that decided, I'm eligible for 2026, but I'm gonna wait a year. And that left this guy at the top, the Heisman Trophy winner, the national champion from Indiana, Fernando Mendoza. He's got 2 of the 3. He's looking for the Triple Crown to be the number 1 overall pick in this draft, and I expect him to be that. But he's not the number 1 guy on our board, and we'll get to that in a minute. But man, what a season from Fernando Mendoza. I know you're going to get into this interesting kind of winding journey for him throughout the college ranks to get to literally the top of the mountain as an undefeated national champ, Heisman Trophy winner, and the favorite to go number 1 overall. Tell me what you saw from Fernando Mendoza this year in his 1 season at Indiana under Kirk Cignetti. What a magical run he just had with the Hoosiers.
Best quarterback in college football this season, Luke, without a question. And it's such a fascinating journey, as you mentioned. He was supposed to go to Yale, then he ends up going to Cal and ends up playing, starting for 2 seasons there. And if you kind of watch his tape at California, you kind of saw the type of player he could become, but there was a lot of personnel questions around him. The offensive line at Cal, 1 season, gave up 50 sacks. Hard to be a pretty good quarterback when you're dealing with an offensive line that had that many questions. But if you fast forward to 2025, and this is what was intriguing to me about Mendoza this season, was when you watched him at Cal, you saw the ability to move, the arm, the accuracy, leadership as well. This Kirk Cignetti offense at Indiana, Curtis Rourke had a fantastic season in 2024. He led them to the playoff. And I think you thought with Mendoza, there's a little bit more talent here. There's a little bit more upside. I don't know that we saw a Heisman Trophy and national championship pick out of that, but that's what he delivered. And it's all those things. Like, there's a lot of intangibles that just show up. Like I mentioned, the leadership. I love the touch that we saw this season. They love those back shoulder fades, the accuracy over 60% every year. Took it up a notch this season. So there was the accuracy, the ability to make plays at the ground when he needed to, escape the pocket. You saw all those type of things. Maybe not the strongest arm in the world, but there was enough there at Indiana to hit on those big plays. So a very fascinating journey to get to Indiana, and it culminated by winning the national championship in his hometown of Miami. That's a pretty cool college football story.
Yeah, man, I don't think you could write a Hollywood script to hit hit it on the nose quite like this one. And again, nobody's without their limitations, and I've talked about this with each guy, but with Mendoza, I think it's kind of what you mentioned. The arm strength isn't out of this world, but it's good enough. The other parts of his game make up for that. When I watched the tape on Mendoza, there were two things that stood out to me. One, when he would have his lowest lows, right? I think about the pick six in the Oregon game that almost kind of sunk their chances of winning that game. When he has to get to that last read, when he's going from 1 to 2 to 3, if he gets to that fourth read kind of across the field, he's got that, that mentality, that gunslinger mentality, that what we call it arm arrogance, right? Like, I can make every throw, even when you probably can't in certain moments. And there were those moments where, man, if he's on that far hash mark on the other side of the field and he's trying to throw late across, to all the way to the other sideline and thinks, hey, I can get it there, and it gets picked because it doesn't have enough juice on it and it's too late. Those windows are going to get even tighter in the NFL. Those gaps, those DBs are so good. They're so quick. And so I could see the potential, especially as a rookie, for more interceptions than he's going to be comfortable with, because he's going to have to learn, hey, I can't make those throws in that moment. I've got to get to my reads quicker. There's so much he does well. Again, there are moments this season where, can he make plays as a runner when necessary? We obviously saw it in the national championship game with that incredible touchdown run. But I do think at the next level, man, those defensive linemen at the next level, they move differently, man. Even at 300-plus pounds, some of those interior guys just – you're not going to be able to escape them. I don't think he's the kind of athlete that's going to easily escape the pocket as often as he did it at Indiana, which honestly wasn't really that often. He did it when he needed to, but I think he's an adequate athlete. I think he's got pretty good arm strength. I think it's the sum of all parts that makes him what he is. He brings so much to the table as a total package quarterback. And again, when you look at the Raiders, look at Tom Brady, who's in that room, kind of, I'm sure heavily involved in those decision-making. He sees a 6'5" quarterback that can be surgical from the pocket and just deliver the ball accurately to all levels. I mean, that's his game, right? That's the skill set that made him so special. Obviously, you never want to compare an incoming rookie to the greatest quarterback of all time. But those are the traits that I think Tom will see and be like, hey, that's the guy we need to develop. Clint Kubiak is the new head coach. It'll be a perfect scenario there. We've come to the moment, Steven. We've got number one on our list, and I don't think it's very often when you can put a safety at the top of the NFL draft board. I did it a couple of years ago with Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton was a very different kind of body type. He was 6'4" and had the long legs and long arms with the long striding speed and those sorts of things. This guy's not that. He's a different build. He's a different type of guy. But in terms of the skill set, it's so similar to what we saw out of Kyle Hamilton, why he was the number one guy on my board. Last year, I was super high on Nick Emanwuri coming out of South Carolina. Again, a very different player, 6'3", 225, 4'3", 40, just a ridiculous athlete. But as a football player, was still kind of figuring it out, which is why he wasn't quite as high as I have Hamilton and the guy we're about to talk about. But, man, every time I looked for an excuse not to put Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, at the top of this board, I can't find anything, man. I mean, I'm gonna try to point out a weakness, but I don't know that I have one with this guy. I mean, I want to hear from you first. When you watch Ohio State again, we talked about, you mentioned Matt Patricia earlier and how his pro-style scheme really has set these Buckeyes defenders up for success at the next level to make that transition because they're so used to a pro-style scheme. But, man, I don't know about you, but every time I watched Ohio State, if I was trying to watch somebody else, number two was like, nah, I'm still the best guy on the field. You're going to watch me.
Luke, this is kind of a boring way to describe a player, but it's like football player, chess piece, right? Every time you watched Ohio State, Caleb Downs was making an impact. And it even goes back to from being a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. He went to Alabama, transferred to Ohio State after Nick Saban retired, made a day one impact at Alabama, and kept that going at Ohio State. So, from a 5-star prospect to 5-star impact right away. And I think you mentioned Eamon Warren, and you think about the way that the NFL has evolved and so much heavy trying to figure out how you stop the passing game. Well, here's a guy that can play as kind of the versatility, the athleticism, the football IQ, everything you need to be able to stop the run, be a chess piece kind of against the pass. So, I mean, Caleb Downs really has it all. And like I said, I know it's a boring way to describe it, but, if I'm thinking about how you translate college to NFL, here's just a football player who's got, virtually, in my mind, and I'll be curious to hear what you say, not a ton of weaknesses that can pop off the page as far as making an impact against the run and pass, and that versatility is going to be super valuable in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, like I mentioned with Hamilton, 6'4", 215, and even Worry 6'3", 225. Caleb Downs is listed at 6 foot 205. Maybe he's a little smaller than that because guys tend to be in terms of those listed measurables. But that's it, man. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe he's a little small. Maybe I'm grasping at straws here to find a weakness with this guy. The younger brother of Josh Downs, NFL wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts already. So obviously the family, the athleticism runs deep. But this guy, listen, I said it earlier, I hate comparing incoming rookies to Hall of Fame players and these guys. But like the traits, like if I look back at when Ed Reed was coming out of Miami, what made him special? It was what was between his ears. Like, he was obviously a great athlete, but it was his understanding of offenses, his understanding of responsibilities and schemes that allowed him to, I've said it in my scouting report that I have coming out in our NFL Draft magazine, he's a defender who teleports on the field. Like, if I'm a quarterback, having played the position, like I'm walking up, first thing you do, you find your safeties, you're looking for your mic. But if you look up and Caleb Downs is like in a single high alignment, he's in like that free safety, middle of the field, that's where he is. You're like, okay, that's where he is. And then you snap the ball and he's in the backfield, like tackling your running back, like immediately. Like, his combination of physical and mental traits, his understanding of the game, his understanding of, run fits and angles and pursuit, all these types of things, while being the kind of athlete that can back it up. Because again, we've seen defenders who are really smart, who know what's coming and can do the mental side, but their bodies can't get them there, right? They're not the type of athletes that can fully maximize that, because they'll be like, hey, I knew you were going there, I just couldn't get there, and it doesn't matter. Man, Caleb Downs, I feel like, is the total package. And you mentioned it, the way the NFL is trending with the way defensive football is played in reaction to the way offense is played is you've got to find a way to limit the passing game without loading the box, right? Like, or limit the running game without loading the box up. And the way you do that is by having a guy that can line up as a free safety, can come down in the box and play strong safety. He can play in the slot. He can hang with whatever tight end you have in coverage, whatever running back. He can knife into the backfield. You can use him as a blitzer. I mean, again, he's got the brains and the brawn, right? He's got all the physical talent in the world. He's one of the smartest players in this draft. And that's why, again, regardless of position, and again, I don't know that he even goes top 5 because teams still don't seem to understand the transformative impact that a guy like that can make for your defense. I absolutely think he's worth a top 5 pick. If anybody gets him outside of that range, I mean, I look at Washington at 7, New Orleans at 8. Pretty much every team there should be no team that looks at this guy and says, we don't need him. I don't see that happening at all. That's why he's the top guy on my board, man.
Luke, also one interesting note about Caleb Downs was there was actually some preseason chatter at Ohio State. They were actually going to try to play him on offense too. So, like you said, to go back to that athleticism and versatility, maybe he could be, a punt returner or return on special teams. But
which we also saw that they did that.
Yeah.
Like, he did have some return game. I don't know that I'm putting my top 5 or 10 safety back at the return guy, but man, I want the ball in this guy's hands, whether it's an interception or a punt or a kick return. He absolutely did that, and he's such a dangerous weapon with the ball in his hand.
Absolutely, Luke. Yeah, he's just, like you said, the versatility, the high football IQ, the athleticism, the ability to make an impact. He seems like almost like one of the safest picks you can make in the NFL draft because of the versatility and impact he can make this year.
I know a lot of you people watching this probably thought we would have Fernando Mendoza at the top. Again, I expect him to be the number 1 overall pick, but I just don't see the weaknesses in Caleb Downs' game that we did see, I think, in Fernando Mendoza's game. Again, for more on that, make sure you check out this video. We're going to dive deep into what could keep Fernando Mendoza from becoming the kind of impact player at the NFL level that he did in college.